Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker and today is the second episode of NBA Trade Rewind. This is a series in which I take a look back at impactful trades throughout NBA history and track not only the impact of the assets that were traded initially, but also what the players and picks traded eventually turned into down the line and how the trade actually looks right now. Last time I took a look at Carmelo Anthony being traded from the Nuggets to the Knicks in 2011, so if you missed that one, go check it out. But today's topic is a trade that is much less complicated to track throughout history than the Anthony trade, but is still very interesting and certainly had a huge impact on the league, and that is the 2012 trade that sent James Harden from the Oklahoma City Thunder to the Houston Rockets. We begin all the way back in October of 2012. The Thunder had just come off a 47-win lockout-shortened season in which they lost in the NBA Finals to the Miami Heat, which was the year that LeBron James finally won his first NBA championship. James Harden averaged nearly 17 points per game off the bench that season, and even though he hadn't yet fully rounded out his offensive game to the nearly unguardable level he's at now, he was still one of the best young players in the league, alongside his teammates Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant. OKC had their young core of those three guys plus big man Serge Ibaka, and heading into the 2012 finals, it looked like they would be together for a long time. However, in that final series, an eventual 5-game loss to the Heat, Harden's value was called into question. To be fair, every member of their core made mistakes in that series that you might expect from such a youthful group in their first NBA Finals, but apart from a strong start to the series, especially in Game 2, Harden nearly disappeared for Games 3, 4, and 5. Following the finals in the offseason, a nearly 4-month-long contract negotiation between Harden's agent and the Thunder came down to one final offer: 4 years and $54 million. Oklahoma City was trying to avoid the luxury tax as a small market team, and knowing how expensive it would have been to keep all four of Westbrook, Durant, Harden, and Ibaka together long term, they were lowballing Harden and hoping it would be enough to keep him around. But it wasn't, as Harden turned down the extension and prompted the weirdly timed trade to Houston in October of 2012, moving one of their most important pieces just months after appearing in the NBA Finals with one of the youngest teams in the league to Houston, where he quickly signed a much more lucrative deal with the Rockets. Now on to the terms of the trade. The Thunder sent James Harden, Cole Aldridge, Daquan Cook, and Lazar Hayward to the Rockets for Jeremy Lamb, Kevin Martin, a 2013 first-round pick, a 2013 second-round pick, and a 2014 first-round pick. First, I'm going to be looking at what impact the players traded had on each team, and then I'll talk about what the picks became. For the Thunder, Lamb was meant to be a high upside piece to make up for what they lost in the long term with Harden, while Martin was supposed to provide an immediate impact as a shooter and scorer, while also bringing a veteran presence. The problem was, Lamb never really came close to becoming the player they hoped he would be, and was extremely inconsistent in OKC. The 2012 lottery pick out of UConn posted modest averages in his time with the Thunder, although to be fair to him, he was just 20 to 22 years old at the time, and he's developed his game a ton since being sent to the Hornets via trade in 2015. For Martin, he had a solid lone season with the Thunder in the 2012-13 season, but his production didn't match what Harden had provided the year before. Not that it was the expectation for him to match Harden stat for stat, and he did fill in his role admirably, but he spent only one season with the team before being traded to Minnesota in 2013. As a team, the Thunder actually improved their winning percentage from the previous lockout-shortened season and won 60 games in the 2012-13 season, but didn't make the conference finals, after Russell Westbrook's season ended with an injury in a first-round series win against James Harden and the Houston Rockets. From there, they lost in the second round to Memphis, and a variety of disappointments and missed opportunities followed in the post-Harden Thunder era, all the way through Kevin Durant leaving OKC for the Warriors in 2016. For the Rockets, the only player that really provided them any on-court value was, of course, James Harden, who nearly immediately blossomed into one of the league's best scorers and obviously won his first MVP award last season, meaning that the Thunder had 3 eventual MVP winners on their roster at the same time as young players back during that 2012 Finals series. One thing I do distinctly remember about the Harden trade was how weird the timing was, as he was traded on October 27th and the season opener that year was on Halloween, so he really didn't have any time at all to get used to his new team. But he stepped in very quickly and had some crazy scoring games to begin his Rockets career, including 37 points in his first game with the team and 45 points on just 19 shots in his second game as a Rocket. From there, Harden has blossomed into one of the best players in the league and an elite scorer, especially once he was paired with Mike D'Antoni as his head coach. The fit between him, his coach, and the Morey ball ideology of the entire franchise could not be more ideal. And even though I'm sure Harden has had his moments where he looks back on what could have been with those OKC teams if they had stayed together, ultimately his decision to turn down the extension from the Thunder and as a result be moved to the Rockets provided him a huge boost within the league hierarchy as well as financially with his new Supermax contract. Now let's move on to looking at what each of the picks exchanged in the deal turned into, as well as what all the assets overall got each team down the road. As I said in the beginning, the Thunder received a 2013 first, 2013 second, and 2014 first round pick in the trade, while the Rockets didn't receive any draft compensation. That 2013 first ended up at 12th overall, which the team used to select Steven Adams. By far the most valuable eventual piece of the trade to the Thunder, Adams has turned into one of the best defensive and rebounding bigs in the league while continuing to make strides on the offensive end as part of a deadly pick-and-roll combination with Russell Westbrook. Ironically, a player like Adams is exactly what those old Thunder teams needed back in 2012. A tough, bruising, defensive-minded center to complement their immensely talented perimeter players. That was what Kendrick Perkins was supposed to be when OKC traded for him, which is another deal I'd like to take a look at in the future in this series, and although obviously Adams would have never joined the Thunder without the Harden trade, it is still ironic to think about how well he would have fit within that roster. Next up is the 2013 second round pick, and that turned into Alex Abrines, who is also still with the Thunder. Although he didn't actually come over to the NBA until 2016, and he's had an up and down career with the team so far, I would still say he's had an above average impact on the team as a former second round pick, providing much needed shooting from the outside, although last year was certainly a step back from his rookie season in the league. And lastly now is the 2014 first round pick, which landed at 21st overall and became Mitch Mcgary. And unfortunately for the Thunder, he never really provided much to the team. He had injury issues in college and those continued in the NBA, and he was just never really able to get his career on track and was waived 2 years later, which caused Mcgary to now enter the world of competitive bowling of all things. Moving on now to the section that got a little bit complicated in the Carmelo Anthony video, and I struggled with how to present it in a way that made sense at the time, and I apologize for that, but this time it is much less complicated. And that is the section in which I look at what all of the assets turned into down the line. Let's begin with the Rockets. Obviously, James Harden is still with the team. Daquan Cook and Lazar Hayward both left the team for what amounted to nothing, and the only thing of real interest on this side of the trade is what happened with Cole Aldridge. He was traded in 2013 as a part of a package for Thomas Robinson, and then Robinson was flipped in 2013 again for a package that included the draft pick that became Dillon Brooks, who is now part of a promising young core for the Grizzlies and has had a really good start to his career considering his draft position. The Rockets were actually the team that originally drafted Brooks in 2017, but then traded him that night for a 2018 second round pick that became DeAnthony Melton. And then Melton became a part of a 2018 trade along with Ryan Anderson to the Suns for Brandon Knight and Marquise Chriss. So long story short, the Cole Aldridge part of the original trade could be changed to what became a piece in the 2018 Brandon Knight Marquise Chriss trade. And now on to the Thunder. As I said, Jeremy Lamb ended up in Charlotte via a 2015 trade for Luke Ridnour and a second round pick, both of which netted them essentially nothing in the long run. And then I already talked about the impact of the ongoing careers of Steven Adams and Alex Abrines, while Mitch Mcgary was waived 2 years after being drafted, which means that the 2018 version of the original James Harden trade is this: James Harden and a piece of the 2018 Knight/Chriss trade to the Rockets for Steven Adams and Alex Abrines. And I don't care who you ask, if you're an NBA fan, every single person on the planet would trade Adams and Abrines for James Harden, which means the Rockets won this trade by a significant margin. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Adams and he's critically important to the Thunder, and Harden ended up in a great situation and wouldn't have become an MVP if he had stayed with the Thunder. But there's no denying who got the better part of this trade. Not that the Thunder didn't get any good players out of it, but the Rockets 100% won. Now, I also understand that there is a ton of context around this particular trade. There have been a lot of stories thrown around about this deal. That the Thunder valued Serge Ibaka more than James Harden because he was a big while Harden was a perimeter player, and they already had plenty of scoring in Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, and they figured they could sign Ibaka for cheaper than Harden and thus stay under the luxury tax that they were desperately trying to avoid. And while Ibaka continued to develop and was really good for the Thunder, and they nearly and arguably should have made the 2016 finals after being up 3-1 on the Warriors in the conference finals, Kevin Durant's last in OKC, had they decided to keep Harden instead, things could have been much different. Maybe they do win a championship in 2016 or a different year, and KD never decides to leave, and then the whole league is completely different as a result of him not becoming a Warrior, which is an all-time great what if. But regardless of the reasoning, it's pretty clear to me at least that the Thunder made the wrong decision in trading James Harden. The crazy thing to me is that it seems like in hindsight, the biggest reason for the lowball contract offer that sealed Harden's fate was the luxury tax issue. But now the Thunder have no issue going well over the luxury tax for a Russell Westbrook and Paul George-led team, when they could have had Westbrook, Durant, and Harden all together if they had that same mindset back in 2012. I know that the league is much different now financially, and maybe that's why they are now willing to spend so much more on player salaries, and again, they did still get some good value out of the trade. But trading away a player that goes on to win an MVP in exchange for a borderline all-star level big and a rotation guard is never going to look good when you look back on this particular trade. And that is going to be the end of today's Trade Rewind video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.